we're talking in a matter of decades, that entire community and society could be wiped out from the face of the earth.
They are the most threatened by climate change.
80% of these islands could be uninhabitable by 2050.
Experts have warned that the Maldives might disappear in the next 100 years.
Wipe the lush tropical paradise right off of the map.
Imagine waking up to find your homeland is no longer on the map. Not through war, but through the relentless acts of nature, cutting you and other inhabitants off from the rest of the world. For many, the idea of a country disappearing may seem like a dystopian narrative, a reality that only belongs in science fiction, but it's a reality for some nations. Today, we're uncovering which countries are most at risk, why this is happening, and how it's already impacting real lives. The thought of one's homeland slowly sinking, inch by inch, into the sea is unimaginable for most of us. Yet, for the people in places like the Maldives, Tuvalu, and Kiribati, this nightmare is all too real. These nations, which sit mere feet above sea level, are gradually being swallowed by the ocean. So, what exactly causes a country to disappear? The answer lies in a single word: climate change. The phenomenon has far-reaching consequences, but one of the most severe is the melting of polar ice caps, which is driving sea levels up at an unprecedented rate. But let's break down why this is a global crisis that demands our attention. Melting ice doesn't just vanish into thin air. It transforms into water that flows into oceans, swelling them inch by inch. As temperatures continue to rise globally, vast ice sheets in cold places like Antarctica and Greenland are shedding billions of tons of water annually. This process pushes sea levels higher, posing an existential threat to low-lying island nations and coastal communities.
The ice along Lendbrain Glacier's edge is melting, like it does at the end of every summer. But now winter doesn't create enough snow to replenish it.
I think that right now it's disappearing, even though it's been here for the last 6,000-7,000 years for people to experience. And that's something that's hard to put into words, how it makes the loss of a landscape.
The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released a report forecasting that sea levels could rise by up to 3 feet by the year 2100. Yet studies, like the 2012 University of Plymouth research, estimate that this rise could reach as much as 6.6 feet by the century's end. To put this into perspective, a few feet of sea level rise may not seem dramatic, but for countries like the Maldives, which is only 1.5 meters above sea level on average, this increase could lead to total submersion. Fragile and low-lying countries like the Maldives, Tuvalu, and Kiribati are to experience more floods, droughts, and erosion while slowly disappearing into the ocean. The Maldives is predicted to be underwater by 2050. Unfortunately, rising sea levels aren't the only threat. Other climate-related factors could also contribute to these impending disasters. In recent years, these low-lying countries have experienced more natural disasters, such as cyclones and hurricanes. Additionally, in Tuvalu, there have been cases of saltwater intruding into freshwater, contaminating the drinking water supply and jeopardizing agricultural productivity. The impact is devastating. Without freshwater and arable land, survival becomes nearly impossible. The future of these countries is frightening, and it's even more alarming when we realize that we have contributed to this. These climate-induced disasters are not just unfortunate accidents, they are largely a result of human activity. Scientists describe this as anthropogenic climate change caused by human beings. According to the NRDC, Natural Resources Defense Council, greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, land use, transportation, electricity generation, manufacturing, agriculture, oil and gas development, buildings, and our lifestyle choices have all immensely contributed to climate change. As these countries disappear, so do their unique cultural heritage, ancestral lands, and artifacts. Communities would be displaced, and traditional ways of life would be lost forever. According to The Conversation, 2020, climate displacement is a complex issue. It's not just about moving people from one place to another, it's about rebuilding lives, communities, and identities. The loss of land would disrupt traditional means of livelihood. According to Dr. Rajendra Pachari, the former chairperson of the IPCC, the impact of climate change on livelihoods will be severe. Access to basic amenities like food, water, healthcare, and even education would become challenging. Climate displacement would cause an increase in mental health issues, particularly PTSD, anxiety, depression, and feelings of loss, disconnection, and hopelessness. The economic impacts on these countries would be unbearable, as their disappearance would lead to a loss of livelihoods and industries, resulting in unemployment and economic instability. Countries like the Maldives, which rely heavily on tourism, would lose a significant number of tourists, leading to economic decline.
Fitch Ratings has downgraded the Maldives' long-term foreign currency issuer default rating from B- to CCC+, now highlighting severe financial vulnerabilities. This downgrade reflects escalating risks tied to deteriorating external financing and liquidity metrics.
Additionally, there would be increased cases of inequality, higher crime rates, and rising poverty levels. As these countries sink and slowly go extinct, the unique species found within them also disappear, including Kiribati's ancient mangrove forests, the sea turtles in the Maldives, and the unique seabirds in Tuvalu. Natural barriers that once protected these countries would be swept away, leading to homes, buildings, and cultural heritage sites being destroyed. Rising sea levels would also contaminate freshwater, making it unsafe to drink, rendering the soil infertile, destroying crops, and leading to drought. The land, once safe to live on, would slowly turn into a death trap for its inhabitants. As these countries vanish, so do the boundaries, sovereignty, and international recognition. This can lead to territorial disputes, as neighboring countries would try to claim resources or extend their own boundaries. Also, the citizens of these countries want to seek refuge in other countries, but they don't really qualify as refugees. So who would provide them with the protection they need? The disappearance of these countries could begin to cause implications on the rights of its inhabitants. Rights to nationality. As the countries disappear, the citizens begin to lose their nationality. Since these countries are no longer in existence, the concept of nationality and citizenship begins to get really complex. Right to health. They also begin to lose access to healthcare. Most of the citizens are likely to suffer from mental trauma and waterborne diseases. The means of livelihood is also disrupted, limiting their rights to economic security and livelihood. Though rising sea levels threaten ecosystems, coastal cities, and the Earth as a whole, there's still hope for humanity. Some solutions include building seawalls and barriers, pumping sand onto eroded beaches, building flood control gates, constructing buildings on pilings to protect against flooding, promoting sustainable land use practices to reduce deforestation, adopting renewable energy sources to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, building floating cities, and constructing artificial reefs. Countries can also collaborate to develop policies that address climate change migration. Individually, we all have a role to play to save these countries from going extinct. Make eco-friendly choices. If possible, use public transport, walk or cycle. Reduce energy consumption at home. Minimize the use of single-use plastics. Recycle and compost. Buy locally sourced foods. Reduce meat consumption. Repurpose and reuse items and choose eco-friendly products. By making these changes, we can ensure a livable life for these countries and their citizens. The governments of these countries are actively trying their best as they try to combat the devastating impacts of climate change. Despite their vulnerability, these nations are demonstrating remarkable determination. The government of the Maldives has launched a climate resilience plan that focuses on transitioning to 100% renewable energy by 2030, building seawalls, and integrating climate change education into school curricula. Tuvalu's government is also beginning to prioritize strengthening coastal defenses, restoring mangroves, implementing sustainable farming practices, and powering 50% of the country with solar energy by 2025.
The tiny Pacific island of Tuvalu is facing an urgent battle against rising seas. With tides projected to flood half of the main island by 2050, the nation's 11,000 people are watching their land disappear. But Tuvalu isn't just standing still. From building artificial land to pushing for global recognition of its borders, this small nation is fighting for its future as the waters continue to rise.
Kiribati's government is now focusing on building seawalls, flood-resistant homes, solar and wind power, and educating citizens on climate change adaptation. The government's efforts to combat the devastating consequences of climate change, which are likely to destroy their country, are admirable. International support is also crucial to ensure these countries can achieve their goals and remain on the map. Over the years, $1.5 billion has been allocated by the Green Climate Fund to support these projects. Additionally, according to the 2020 United Nations Development Program, the United Nations has facilitated technology transfer to support these countries. While these solutions offer hope, they also come with challenges. Some of the economic constraints include, first, high costs of construction and maintenance for seawalls and flood control gates. Secondly, economic burdens on vulnerable nations. Also, because of the construction of artificial reefs and seawalls, marine ecosystems are likely to get harmed. Communities might also get displaced in the process. Other limitations include corruption, inadequate infrastructure and expertise in vulnerable nations, dependence on non-renewable energy, and difficulties in coordination among nations with competing interests. The solution to this, however, isn't far-fetched. Innovative solutions like organizing community-led adaptation initiatives and employing the use of nature-based solutions like restoration of mangrove forests and eco-friendly coastal protection can help overcome these obstacles. According to the IPCC Fifth Assessment Report, by 2050, sea levels are projected to rise by 10 to 20 centimeters, and by 2100, it is projected to rise by 43 to 110 centimeters. According to a study published by the University of Oxford on Nature, 2019, by 2050, at least 77% of its land area would be uninhabitable as the land area would be vulnerable to flooding, and by the end of this century, the entire nation would cease to exist and be submerged underwater. As for Tuvalu, by 2050, the sea level rise will contaminate freshwater sources, and just like the Maldives, by the end of this century, the country might cease to exist. Kiribati is also likely to face the same fate. Another major issue would be climate migration because, according to the 2018 World Bank report, by 2050, more than 140 million people will get displaced worldwide due to climate change. On the bright side, with the innovations being adopted by these countries and their governments, these countries might have a chance to survive and remain on the map, defying the dire predictions of disappearance. It is expected that by 2050, Maldives would have built advanced seawalls to protect its coastal communities. Tuvalu likewise is projected to have achieved more than 70% solar energy penetration and would have implemented sustainable agricultural practices. In this video, we've studied 3 main countries that might become the 21st century Atlantis. But it's important to note that there are a lot of countries and cities that would suffer this fate. Cities like Amsterdam, currently its lowest point is 22 feet below sea level because the Netherlands is a low-lying country. Another city likely to not exist by 2050 is Shanghai. It is projected that the median relative sea level rise would be between 45 centimeters and 50 centimeters. Rio de Janeiro is another city that might cease to exist by 2050. Miami is also predicted to be at least 60% underwater by the year 2060. Elsewhere, cities like Lagos, Basra, Bangkok, and Venice are similarly at risk, with predictions suggesting that they might become uninhabitable and submerged in water by 2050. This isn't intended to cause alarm, but rather to serve as a wake-up call as the fate of these countries and cities hang in the balance, emphasizing the need for a collective action to put a stop to the brutal consequences of climate change. Today, we've explored the heartbreaking realities of countries on the brink of extinction due to climate change. We've also studied the social, economic, and environmental consequences that come with these countries disappearing from the map, and studied solutions that can help combat these problems. As governments work tirelessly to protect their nations, a question remains: what can we do to make a difference? Together, we hold the power to shift the tide, one small action at a time. Every single choice we make, no matter how small, is part of a much larger story unfolding right now. Imagine a world where our collective efforts preserve landscapes, communities, and cultures for future generations. Will you be part of the change? If this video left you wondering about what's next, like, subscribe, and join us. This journey is only beginning, and there's so much more to uncover.